Trauma is a survival mechanism. Our nervous system, our brains, and our bodies, they are very, very intelligent. And everything they do is for a reason. And we quite often look at trauma as something really horrible, something really negative, something really serious must have happened. But that doesn't mean that that's not the case at all, essentially. So trauma is a way that our bodies and minds keep us safe because they try to protect us, and they're smart, and they think that having this trauma is a way to keep us survive, to help us survive those experiences. And what actually makes something traumatic is not what the actual person went through. What makes it traumatic is how they took that experience on, like what they took that experience on to mean. For example, right, two people could be in a car crash. One person could get out of that car crash. It could be a very minor, let's say it's a very minor car crash. And two people could react totally differently in that situation. One person reacts, oh my God, like I'm so glad that was only minor, that I'm fine, that I'm safe, that the car's damaged, that's all. The other person could take that on as a traumatic experience, that, cars are dangerous, that if they were driving, that they can't be trusted, or the other driver can't be trusted, or the words are horrible place, or the words against me, that's why this happened. And they could really turn that into a really traumatic experience, even though the other person that experienced the exact same situation was totally fine. So you need to, the sooner you can understand, it's so important to understand that it's not the actual event that causes the trauma, it's how we take it on. And this is why a lot of our trauma comes from childhood, during our childhood conditioning years, especially from the ages of 0 to 7, because between those years, the part of our brain that, rationalizes and thinks clearly and makes decisions for ourselves, that part of the brain isn't developed yet. So we take on everything we hear and see to be true and to mean something about us, and we just don't have the ability to question anything. So if we don't have, supportive people around, people to talk us through things, people to help us process things and understand things, and help us, not avoid it, then that's when it gets stored as a trauma. It basically gets stored as a trauma when the stress response cycle isn't closed. Because when an experience comes up, a stressful experience comes up, it opens the stress response cycle. And when that stress and trauma response is over, it's meant to close that cycle, but it quite often doesn't close that cycle because we don't have that support to close it again. So instead of that stress coming up and our stress response cycle opening like it's meant to, instead of opening and then closing again, it stays open. And that's the number one thing why a lot of people get stuck in trauma, and why it essentially takes over our whole life, right? Because we did not have that support to close it. We all need homeostasis, right? We all need to be safe and be balanced and have balance in the body and in our body systems, and to function correctly. But a lot of us miss out on this because we get severe cases of trauma stuck and trapped in our body and mind. And trauma is a spectrum, right? We all have trauma to some degree. It just depends on the amount and if we are able to process it and move forward, or whether we stay stuck in it. And what happens for something to become traumatic is, first of all, our nervous system needs to go into overwhelm. So it begins to feel too many emotions at once. And number two, the negative emotion or survival stress becomes stored in our body. And this is where it becomes stored in our body. It becomes stored in our body if that stress response cycle isn't closed. So if that stress response cycle isn't closed, it gets stored in our body and becomes survival stress. And from there, we create painful narratives based on that experience. So a painful narrative is similar to a conditioned program in our subconscious mind, a limiting belief. So conditioned program could be, I'm unsafe to go outside because of, say, a trauma you had in the past, or a limiting belief of no one likes me or I'm dumb. So limiting belief is any belief that you believe about yourself that's not true, and it's also similar to a narrative. So any narrative is anything that's, again, limiting you, that's negative, and you're just playing it over and over in your head. So basically when these traumas happen and we don't find that completion, we replay those narratives over and over again. Like the person in the car crash that thought, you know, the world was against them and that they can't trust anyone and they shouldn't be on the road, for example, might play over in their head the bang of the car crashing, of the cars crashing. They might see it they might be able to visualize it, or they might be able to hear it, or, you know, feel it. And they might just, you know, replay pictures of them trying to get into cars again and not being safe. There's just like so many narratives that could be played through that. And from there, we orphan parts of ourselves. So basically, when we stay in a survival state due to trauma, obviously we don't feel safe, right? Trauma and staying stuck in survival state and anxiety and stress, it means we don't feel safe in our body. So therefore, parts of our body begin to shut down. And these are known as parts that we orphan. We orphan, we forget about them, and we don't want them there because they don't feel safe. We don't feel safe to feel those parts and to connect to those parts. So it's so important to realize that whenever something comes up, even if you feel at the time that maybe it's not traumatic, it's so important to still, you know, question it, either on yourself, with someone else, just journal or out, do whatever you can to question it, learn from it, and process it so it doesn't become traumatic. Because in order for it to not become traumatic, you really need that safe resource and ability to process what actually happened. So even start by focusing on finding what your safe resource is, right? Because as I said, at the end of the day, all stress and anxiety and trauma comes from feeling unsafe. So start to ask yourself, what is your safety resource? What makes you feel safe? And how can you bring more of that into your life? And how can you create more of that safety in you? And number 3 meant, when I was talking about the creation of painful narratives, it means we create strong beliefs about ourselves, about others, and the world. And again, a lot of these are created as a child between the ages of 0 and 7. And we can be, you know, people in their 70s still are trapped in painful narratives from like the age of around 2. Like, it's crazy how long these narratives and how long this trauma can go on unless we do something about it. And number 4, when we're talking about orphan parts, so a traumatic event happens and it creates an internal state inside us. And because that internal state feels uncomfortable, we push it out. Meaning we push it away from us because it's too much to bear in the body and in the mind. So we keep pushing it out till we become dissociated. And that means when we're dissociated, we're not in our body. We're not we're not fully present in our body and in the present moment and inside our body and with what's actually going on. So we dissociate so we don't have to feel that physical and emotional pain. And it's also really important to know that, you know, there's different types of trauma, right? So basically there's acute trauma, there's which looks at single events, sexual abuse, FFF response, FFF completion. And when a single event becomes traumatic, and recognizing acute trauma as well. So when we get into an uncomfortable situation and our well-being is on the line, our amygdala sends a signal to our body that something's not right and triggers us to go into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And when again that circle, that stress response circle, isn't completed in the moment, it gets turned into a trauma, which then controls us, and we have triggers that come up, and then that's when again the trauma can be stored in the body. So basically, acute trauma is something that kind of happens in the moment, happens once off, like a car crash, injuring yourself if you play sport, something like that. It just happens in the moment. Where developmental trauma is another form of trauma which happens ongoing throughout our years growing up. So developmental trauma is from the ages of 0 to 7. It's also thought to be long-term experiences, like it could be even a 7-year relationship you have. Like it doesn't have to be just between the ages of 0 to 7, but that's what it's known as. It's any trauma that you experience for a long time. So it could be childhood trauma from development years. It could be unhealthy relationships and attachments. It could be early survival patterns. It could be adult life and difficult development. It could be periods of extreme distress, ongoing traumatic events, trauma bonding, infant attachment and trauma. There can be so many different things that goes into. And it's also really important to work out when you're wanting to heal your trauma. As I said, it gets stored in your body and your mind. So it's really important to look at healing from a bottoms-up approach and not a top-up approach. So psychology is trying to, psychology says, basically psychology, when it's focusing on a head-only approach, it's like trying to heal a broken leg just by talking about it. And you can't heal a broken leg just by talking about it. And that's essentially what talk therapy does. It keeps you in a loop of talking about experiences and causes more stress. And eventually you become so distressed that you can't hold on to it anymore. And again, you basically disassociate. You orphan parts and dissociate because it's just too much. You can't handle it anymore. This is then releasing your nervous system after high levels of stress, and again you just begin to relive that trauma over and over again. So we just really need that bottoms up approach, which psychology unfortunately doesn't focus on. We need to deal with trauma on a somatic level, on a somatic healing the body and mind level. If you just focus on the head, you start to imprint further trauma. And you're not acknowledging what is actually going on in your body. You're more so distancing yourself from the body and just focus on what's going on in the conscious mind. So you kind of ignore on your body's experience. You can't release, you can't feel safe and have a good mindset if your body is always stuck in fear. It's always stuck in fear and unsafety and hurt or whatever type of trauma is. And seeing psychology misses healing the body, that's why quite often people become on medication at the same time as receiving talk therapy. Because medication kind of replaces the bottoms-up approach to healing the body part. And it's also really important when it comes to healing your trauma to focus on the felt sense. Because trauma exists in a felt sense in our body. It's about working with our contractions. It's about meeting the sensation from the resource that comes from in our body. And it's about recognizing what each sensation in the body means, and when we feel safe where we feel safe in the body, and how we can feel safe, how we can create a safe place to be able to release that trauma. And it's also just about recognizing that, every emotion we feel inside our body. And it's also important just to start by noticing where you feel what emotions in your body. Like maybe you feel sadness in your heart, maybe you feel butterflies, you feel fear in your belly, such as butterflies. And it's really important to just recognize this, right? Really recognize how you feel inside your body when certain emotions come up. Instead of just ignoring them and trying to move past them and trying to question them, actually just begin to sit with that feeling and see what it's trying to tell you. And know what your safe resource is, what your safety resource is, so you can always come back to that when it becomes a little bit overwhelming. And you know, there's lots of different exercises that you can do to kind of help release that trauma and to, you know, bring more safety. So a really good breath one is called the 4-7-8. So it's about breathing in for 4 seconds, pausing for 7 seconds, and exhaling slowly for 8 seconds. And it's inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. And you can do that for as ever long as you need. And, you know, yawning, stretching, sighing, shaking, humming, tapping on our body, especially if you want to tap in the special points, it all helps. You just got to find what works for you. I'm just going to yawn down while we're talking about it. So there's so many ways that can help kind of move that trauma, get that trauma moving throughout your body, get your nervous system regulated again, rather than everything staying stuck and stagnant and tense and tight, which psychology allows it to do so. And during this exercise, like, it's really important to know when you inhale, we go into a sympathetic nervous system. And on the exhale, we go into parasympathetic nervous system. And this is why it's so important to make these exhales longer. Even try, you know, 30 seconds longer to help really regulate that nervous system, to have that exhale 30 seconds longer than the inhale. And, you know, some other exercises that are really powerful is even just giving yourself a hug, right? However way feels good to you, just give yourself a hug. And talk to yourself, tell yourself that it's going to be okay. Another exercise is putting one hand on the belly and one hand on the heart. And just being with your body in that moment and noticing what comes up. And noticing where you feel safe in your body. And connecting to that place that you feel safe in. And taking deep exhales, like focusing on exhaling only. And as you finish the exhale, fully feel yourself softening into your body. And letting everything out of your body. Exhale all the pain, all the trauma, all the tension out of your body. Let it go into the earth. And these are all really important techniques to help with the nervous system regulation and releasing trauma and body connection. So it can be very powerful to do all of these daily, if possible. If not, at least when you feel yourself getting triggered or an event coming up, or you feel yourself getting anxious, stressed, or whatever it is. But if you can really start to do these daily, they will help. But know that these exercises alone aren't enough. If you want to fully get to the root cause of your anxiety, of your stress, of your negative conditioning and negative emotions and trauma, you do need to seek support. A professional such as myself or someone else to get what you need to be able to heal. And remember, do your research. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. If you want to heal on a deep level, it's important to find someone that can help you heal your body and your mind from a bottoms-up approach like myself. And that's why I personally created the Rewrite Your Anxiety method. So for those of you that are new here, my name is Zoe Jean. I'm NLP practitioner and anxiety coach, helping women to heal from all over the world using a process called the Rewrite Your Anxiety method, which focuses on helping you to heal from a bottoms-up approach, right? It's healing your subconscious mind, it's healing your body, it's healing your nervous system, and it's creating sustainable habits. It gives you everything you need to be able to heal your anxiety, to be able to heal your body and your mind, to be able to release the trauma and the tension, to be able to release the past, to be able to get in the present moment and out of your head, to learn how to get rid of all those painful narratives that you're playing over and over in your head, so you can create a life of happiness, inner peace, confidence, belief, trust in yourself, safety, self-love, and so much more. So if you'd love to know more about the process and how you can go about healing your anxiety on a long-term sustainable approach, then comment "I'm ready" below. Otherwise, just start off with these exercises and let me know which one you're going to try, and if you want more videos about this. But definitely give these a go to start off with. And whenever you're ready for more, feel free to reach out to myself. No obligations for us to work together whatsoever. Just feel free to reach out and let me know that you're interested. I'm happy to jump on a free call with you. I'll actually put a link in the description box if you'd like to book in a free call, just for us to get clear on, exactly where you are in life, what's holding you, what's keeping you stuck, where you want to be. And then from when we work out where you currently are and where you want to be, I'll also be able to work out what the gap between the two is, meaning what's stopping you from getting from where you currently are to where you want to be. And we can talk about options about how I could help you to get to where you want to go. Or if it doesn't seem like a good fit for both of us or for either of us, then I'm happy to also refer you to someone else that might be more suited to you. So at the end of the day, booking this call, right, you've got nothing to lose. You can get some free support from me during this call, and then you can also move forward with myself if you want and learn more, or I can also give you options of someone else that might be better suited to you as well. Because let's face it, we all need to find that person that we feel safe around, that we feel confident around, and that's going to help us do what we need to be able to heal. So yes, I'd love you to start with these exercises. Let me know how you go. But again, know that if you want to heal long-term on that deep level, you do need to heal the body and the mind. And it's really important to have that safe place and that motivation, that person holding you accountable to actually make it happen. And a lot of the time, I truly believe we all have the answers within us. We just need that support of someone to help us find the answers and to help us get out of our minds, so we can get out of our heads and out of our past trauma conditions, so we can actually find the answers. So thank you all so much for joining. Let me know in the comments which ones of those you're going to try, and if you'd like to learn more, also book a call with the free link. And you can also find me on Facebook at Zoe Jean and on Instagram at Zoe Jean Coaching. Feel free to check out the description box for that information as well. Looking forward to chatting with you soon. Bye for now.